Imagine standing in a courtroom, feet away from the person who shattered your life forever. In 2011, the family of Officer David Crawford, a 25-year veteran who dedicated his life to protection, did just that. They sat in agony, waiting for justice, after 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay shot the officer at point-blank range simply because he was afraid of being caught breaking into a car. But as the widow and daughter wept, they looked over at the defendant's chair and saw something that defied all human logic. Nicholas Lindsay wasn't crying. He wasn't bowing his head in shame. He was sitting in the back row, wearing a chilling, wide-eyed smirk. He was laughing. In that moment, the tragedy of a lost life was met with the terrifying reality of a cold-blooded lack of remorse. Imagine standing in a cold, silent courtroom, your heart heavy with the weight of a life lost. You are there to see justice for Officer David Crawford, a man who gave 25 years of his life to protect the community. His widow and daughter are sitting just a few feet away, their eyes red from weeks of crying. They look toward the defense table, expecting to see a young man burdened by the gravity of his actions. But instead, they see something that chills them to the bone. 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay isn't hanging his head in shame. He isn't trembling. Instead, he sits there with a wide, chilling smirk, a smile that seems to mock the very air in the room. Why would a teenager, facing the rest of his life behind bars, find something to laugh about? Was it nervous energy, or was it the look of a predator who truly didn't care? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the most disturbing courtroom displays in recent history. We're talking about the smiling killers, juveniles who thought their age was a get-out-of-jail-free card, only to find out that a judge's hammer weighs the same regardless of how young you are. Are you ready to witness the moment the laughter died? The first case, Nicholas Lindsay and the cold reality of a stolen life. The story of Nicholas Lindsay is a haunting reminder of how a split-second decision can shatter multiple families. On a quiet night in St. Petersburg, Florida, Officer Crawford spotted a suspicious person, a teenager in dark clothing. It should have been a routine stop. But within seconds, the air was filled with the sound of gunfire. Nicholas didn't just fire once, he emptied the clip until the officer collapsed. When the investigation led to his door, his own parents sat with him in the interrogation room, sobbing, begging him to tell the truth. Even then, the detachment was visible. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with grief, but Nicholas acted as if he were watching a sitcom. He laughed during testimonies and smiled while the details of the murder were read aloud. How does a child become so disconnected from the value of human life? Is it a failure of parenting, or is some evil simply born? The judge didn't buy the nervous teenager act. In a move that sent shockwaves through the legal system, he handed down a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The smile on Nicholas's face finally vanished when the reality of the iron bars hit him. But here's the question that still haunts the community: if a 16-year-old can kill and then laugh about it, is there any hope for rehabilitation, or should the key be thrown away forever? The second case, the dancing defendants and the arrogance of youth. Moving from a cold smirk to outright mockery, we look at the case in Broward County that left the public in an absolute rage. A group of teenagers, including Maurice Thomas and Thomas Butler, had just led police on a high-speed chase across the county, endangering hundreds of lives. When they were finally caught and brought before a judge, they didn't treat it like a legal proceeding, they treated it like a TikTok trend. They were caught on camera dancing in their chairs, whispering jokes, and laughing while the judge was speaking. It was a blatant display of main character syndrome taken to a criminal level. They believed that because they were minors, the system would just give them a slap on the wrist. But they forgot one thing: judges represent the authority of the state, and they do not like being turned into a joke. The moment the judge realized they were mocking the court, the tone changed instantly. The bail was set at an unreachable amount, and the playful dancing stopped the second the handcuffs were tightened. It makes you wonder, has our society become so soft on juvenile crime that these kids feel invincible? Or is this behavior a cry for help from a generation that has lost its moral compass? The echo of grief, the families left in the wake. Behind every viral clip of a smirking teenager is a family that has been shattered into a million pieces. When we watch Nicholas Lindsay laugh, we often forget to look at the other side of the courtroom, the side where Officer David Crawford's widow and daughter sat, clutching each other, forced to endure the sight of their loved one's killer treating the tragedy like a joke. Imagine the sheer psychological torture of seeking justice for a hero, only to be met with a yawn or a dance move. These families don't just lose a father, a mother, or a grandmother, they lose their sense of safety in the world. For the family of 81-year-old Dorothy Session, the pain wasn't just in her death, but in the realization that her life was ended by someone who found the legal proceedings boring enough to fall asleep. This lack of remorse acts as a second murder, a murder of the victim's dignity. The script of these trials usually follows the evidence, but the true story is written in the tears of the survivors who have to go home to an empty house while the killer sits in a cell, still smiling for the cameras. How do you find closure when the person who took everything from you won't even grant you the respect of a somber face? The emotional scars left on these families are permanent, and no amount of youthful indiscretion can ever justify the cruelty these defendants displayed while the world was watching. The legal battlefield, age versus the nature of the crime. The behavior of these smiling killers has sparked one of the most intense debates in the modern legal system. At what point should the juvenile label be stripped away? Our laws are often designed with the belief that children are capable of change, that their brains aren't fully developed, and that they don't truly grasp the finality of death. But when you look at the calculated nature of a high-speed chase or a point-blank execution, that argument starts to crumble. Prosecutors in these cases often face an uphill battle, trying to convince a jury that a 15 or 16-year-old knew exactly what they were doing. The defense will always point to impulsivity for peer pressure, but the smiles in the courtroom suggest something much more sinister, a total absence of a moral compass. This creates a massive divide in public opinion. Some believe that locking a child away for life is a failure of society, while others argue that if you are old enough to pull a trigger and laugh about it, you are old enough to face an adult's fate. We have seen a shift in recent years, with Supreme Court rulings making it harder to sentence juveniles to life without parole, yet the public outcry continues to grow. Is the system being too soft on a new generation of predators? Or are we, as a society, failing to intervene before these kids turn into the monsters we see on our screens? The courtroom is no longer just a place for a verdict, it has become a battlefield for the soul of the justice system itself. The final reckoning, beyond the gavel and into the shadows. At the end of the day, every yawn from David Moses and every dance move from those Broward County teens is a second trauma inflicted upon the victims' families. While Dorothy Sessions' family sat in agony, David's boredom was the ultimate insult to an 81-year-old woman's legacy. But the law has a way of catching up to even the most arrogant offenders. As the cameras stop rolling and the headlines fade, these individuals are led away from the spotlight and into the cold, silent reality of a maximum security prison. There are no fans there, no cameras to play for, and no friends to impress with a smirk. They are left with nothing but the four walls of a cell and the haunting realization that they traded their entire future for a few moments of courtroom bravado. This isn't just a story about crime, it's a warning. Justice might move slowly, but when that hammer drops, it doesn't care how young you are or how much you smiled during the trial. So, I leave you with this: is a life sentence enough for someone who shows zero remorse, or does the system need to find a new way to deal with these smiling killers? Their fate is now sealed in stone, but the debate over their souls continues.